When we talk about adolescent cannabis use, most public debate focuses on whether cannabis is legal or illegal. What gets far less attention is how young people actually obtain cannabis and whether different sources are linked to different patterns of use. Hi, my name is Christian Maynard, a doctoral candidate at Washington State University in sociology. Today, I want to walk through a longitudinal study published in Drug and Alcohol Dependence that examines how adolescents' sources of cannabis relate to use and its frequency over time. This research zooms in on access pathways, product variety, and patterns of use. This study draws on data from the Happiness and Health Study, a longitudinal cohort of adolescents in Los Angeles. 10 high schools participated, and 9th grade students were followed every 6 months from 9th through 12th grade, spanning 2013 to 2017. Originally, over 3,300 students were enrolled. However, non-using youth or those with incomplete data were excluded, which resulted in a makeup of 835 students. The study's period is important. Medical cannabis had already been legal in California for about 2 decades. Dispensaries were densely concentrated in Los Angeles, and online cannabis access was beginning to emerge. In other words, adolescents were embedded in a cannabis environment with potentially multiple access points. During each wave of the study, students were asked a simple but revealing question: where do you usually get marijuana? They could select multiple sources, including free from friends, buying from someone, medical dispensaries with either a real or fake medical card, online dispensaries, or another source. Across the sample, cannabis access was widespread and embedded in broader substance use contexts. Most participants had already tried alcohol, tobacco, or e-cigarettes, and nearly 9 in 10 reported having friends who had used cannabis. The most common sources, by far, was getting cannabis for free, usually from friends or peers. Over 70% reported this. About half reported buying cannabis from someone, and roughly 16% reported acquiring cannabis with a valid medical card. Other sources, like self-growing or online dispensaries, were rare, under 4% within the sample. So while dispensaries often dominate policy debates, peer-based access remained the most common pathway for adolescents during this period. What makes this study especially valuable is that it looks forward in time. Adolescents who reported buying cannabis from someone were more likely to report cannabis use 6 months later, including combustible, vaporized, edible, and blunt products. They also reported using cannabis on more days per month, compared to peers who did not buy cannabis. Similarly, youth who access cannabis through a medical card at dispensaries showed a higher frequency for use for specific product types, like vaping, edibles, and dabs. These products tend to be higher potency and more varied in form. Obtaining cannabis for free from friends or family was associated with lower odds of using concentrates like dabs and lower frequency of vaping and edible use. Another consistent pattern was that adolescents who used multiple sources of cannabis reported use across a wider range of products and on more days overall. The authors are careful not to claim direct causation, but they offer several plausible interpretations. First, the purchase of cannabis often reflects self-initiated use rather than opportunistic use. That distinction matters. Actively seeking out cannabis may coincide with more sustained or intentional patterns of consumption. Second, certain sources provide more consistent access and greater product variety. Medical dispensaries, for example, offer edibles, vapes, and concentrates that are not always available through peer sharing. This wider selection may allow adolescents to experiment, find preferred products, and continue use in more routine ways. The study also highlighted vaping specifically in that prior to the EVALI crisis or the vaping epidemic, vaping was widely perceived as safer, more discreet, and more efficient at delivering THC. And those perceptions may help explain why vaping showed particularly strong associations with continued use. The key takeaway is not that legalization automatically leads to increased adolescent use. Instead, the study suggests how cannabis access is linked to different usage patterns. An appreciable minority of adolescents were accessing cannabis through medical channels or purchasing it directly, and those pathways were associated with more frequent use and greater engagement with high-potency THC products. Regulations may want to consider adolescent exposure to certain product types, particularly concentrates, and alternative delivery methods, rather than focusing solely on legal status. In short, youth cannabis use is shaped not just by laws, but by access structures, product availability, and social contexts. If we want more nuanced conversations about cannabis and adolescence, studies like this are essential. They move us beyond yes or no debates and towards understanding how real-world access environments relate to behavior over time. As always, the full article is linked below for those who want to dig deeper into the methods and results. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.